Joined by Nick Ferrari and Ateh Jewel for a look at the stories making their headlines today. Morning to both of you. And let's start. Nick, actually, you interviewed the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, on your show this morning, discussing the Ukrainian war, and he thinks we'll still likely be discussing it in a year's time.
Yes, actually, it was yesterday I managed to go down, and because I also, word on Ben Wallace at the moment, I tell you, Phil and Holly, I had the absolute privilege of meeting some of the Ukrainian troops who the British Army are training down in Dorset yesterday, and what an incredible bunch, brave bunch of men and women, and there was a group of about 30 or 40 of them, and one of the army said, you know, the chances are that at least half of you're not going to get to your homes. When you go back to Ukraine, you're not going to survive or you're going to be seriously injured. And to a man and woman, they said, yes, that's just what we take. And the age range was interesting, Philip. The youngest is 18, the oldest, 71. Wow. 71 years old, being trained to drive a tank to fight Vladimir Putin. As to Ben Wallace, what's he been saying? Give me the money and I'll finish the job. As all your viewers will be aware, we are getting 3 weeks out, roughly, from the next budget. All the relevant government departments make their pitches, Philip. Education wants it, health wants it for the nurses, and Defence wants it. Now, what's exceptional, of course, as regards to the MOD, the Ministry of Defence, is the expenditure that's gone out already to Ukraine. Somewhere in the region of, to date, around 3 billion and probably another 2 billion to go. Ben Wallace is looking for, it is reported, anywhere between an 8 to 11 billion pound uplift, and he wanted to show the output that it gets. So myself and a couple of other journalists were invited down to watch these tanks in action, and he was basically saying, give us money, because if we give up now, it will be catastrophic for Ukraine, because obviously Putin would come back. And he also makes the point, Philip, it will be catastrophic for Europe as a whole, because this battle is effectively on our doorstep. If you don't stop Putin in Ukraine, he gets to Poland, and that's NATO.
365 days. It's a year later now, and looking at the figures, the gruesome figures, but nevertheless slightly positive figures, Putin has still not captured or held a single one of his objectives.
His objectives were to take 5 main cities or key areas. He's lost all 5. Let's just pause and think. Over 180,000 Russians, mostly men, have been sent to their deaths, many against their will. There are a lot of grieving Russians. So suspend how you think about Vladimir Putin. There are regular Russian mums and dads and brothers and sisters and wives or whatever who are grieving lost ones. In a battle, he is losing on just about every possible front. But he shows, Philip, no sign of stopping.
Ateh, what do we think about this here? Because obviously, you know, Ben, he wants to finish his job, and I think many people will agree that's absolutely the right thing to do. However, there will be those that will say, hang on a minute, here we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. That sort of money just isn't feasible.
I think history teaches us what to expect when you don't deal with this sort of situation.
Yeah.
How can we afford not to finish the job is what I would say. The numbers are eye-watering, but there are people suffering, there are people dying, and I think they need our support.
Yeah. Well, this is billions, hopefully throughout the rest of the allies around the world. But this is to stop the wave of an aggressor. There's no question that if he were to succeed in any ground here, then he will spread forward. NATO's increased, I think it's 300,000 troops along that long border between NATO and him. And so he has his eyes on other countries.
It's more frightening not to spend the money and support to stop this, because I do think there is no stopping Putin at this moment. It is very clear this is a very aggressive leader who's letting his people down. I think it's up to 188,000 Russian soldiers injured or died. I think it's appalling, and we need to do something to stop it. This is history in the making, and we need to be on the right side of this.
So Nick, I guess then the question is, for how much longer? And when you spoke to him yesterday, he said we'd very much be discussing this still in a year's time.
Holly, that was my opening question. You know, we'll be sitting in front of tanks in 12 months' time. And he said, yes, he thinks we will. And in fact, possibly another 12 months after this, because Putin is not going to do a deal. Putin is not going to talk peace. The only way he will end is if he suffers some kind of fate. There's nothing else. And even when I spoke with very senior British military personnel, they make it quite plain. They are settling down for another possibly 2 years of this conflict. And that then, of course, increases the argument from the Defence Secretary. We need the cash, because the other thing, and by the way, don't worry, panic the viewers, we are sending all this weaponry. We need to protect ourselves as well. So where are our tanks if we need them? And we need to, what they call backfill, and he's aware of that, hence the demand on the expenditure.
Change of subject. Shamima Begum, which we reported live yesterday as the news broke, lost her appeal over the decision to deprive her of British citizenship. Despite a credible case that she was trafficked, ruling means that the 23-year-old remains barred from returning to the UK and stuck in a camp in northern Syria. Some of the broadsheets today saying, you know, is it right that someone should be made essentially stateless and left in a desert? Other papers, other commentators saying, what is it that you know? Do you know something that we don't know that has actually led to this decision?
I'm so conflicted over this as a mother. She was 15. It's grooming. There's no other word for it. She was trafficked, but also you have to be responsible for your actions as well. So I'm really conflicted. But also, it does seem very strange. She was 15. She was trafficked. She did horrible things, allegedly, and she suffered. Her children died. I don't know. Is being citizenship conditional, unconditional? That's the question we're being asked here.
So, well, Nick, I'll ask you that question then.
This is for Holly. This is for your viewers to decide now. What's more important, security or principle? Let me explain. There is a principle, quite rightly, that this woman, young woman to have been made stateless, is actually illegal. She was born, she was raised in the United Kingdom. She is our issue or problem. She should come back here to face trial. I get it. I get all the legal commentators' principle. Now security. Funnily enough, Ben Wallace, again, the Defence Secretary, telling me yesterday that there is a briefing that shows that this woman could pose a threat, so she's being kept out on, quotes, security grounds. To your viewer, what's more important, the absolute principle of British law by which we all choose to live, or security by which we choose to live safely? Let your viewer decide.
The security services have all collaborated here to provide the evidence that was required and that led to this decision, Nick. I asked the question again. There is clearly information here which we're not being told, which may, and it's up to everyone to make their own minds up. We don't live in a world where we're given all the information. We're not. Sometimes it's for our own good that we're not given all the information. But however, there is obviously something here we don't know.
Absolutely, and we need to make it plain that the Commission, in fairness, the Commission accepts that there is undeniable evidence that this young woman at the age of 15 was undoubtedly both groomed and trafficked. I get it. But we are aware, quite rightly, Phillip, of that information. But then on the counter side, you look at other European countries such as Germany and Belgium. They are actually taking their young people, people of similar ages, they're taking them back and they're putting them on trial in their respective countries. So the UK is possibly a bit of an outlier here. But again, to your point, there might be some very good and highly sensitive information as to why it's quite a good place to be as an outlier.
Is there an element here of being used as an example to other young people who may be, and we discussed this at great length with some who have been allowed home and who have been de-radicalised, that these people get inside your head, they're very, very clever, they manage to separate you, but that should this be a route that you want to take, be aware that there's every possibility you might end up left in a desert.
It's a slippery slope in terms of civil rights. Like, if you do this for this case, suddenly if you speak against the government, it's a slippery slope. We saw McCarthyism in the 50s. Where does it end? So if you can be stripped of your rights, it's quite frightening where the goalposts are in terms of what is acceptable. So for those reasons, I'm also on the fence about it's a very difficult case, but she was a child. That's what I'm thinking. At the end of the day, she was a child, like a parent, unconditional. It's your problem to deal with. So maybe she should come home and be dealt with.
This next story, it seems shocking that we're even having to discuss stories like this in 2023. A report has found that women are effectively working for free for 2 months of the year because they are paid so much less than men. Women typically earn nearly 15% a year less than men, and this gets much, much worse when a woman has a child, and again when she turns 50.
It's just so shocking, but not shocking, that in 2023 we're still having to deal with this. Mother Pucker, Anna Whitehouse has campaigned about this. You know, as working mothers, we know the juggle is real, but it's still misogyny in the 21st century that is making this happen, and that we are still feeling the effects of misogyny, that there is such a huge pay gap and the difference. And I do think it's for the government to do something about it and for us to have a national conversation.
Nick?
Well, look, I agree. But the government to do something about it. I thought there was legislation in place that makes this illegal. So if it's going on, we need to actually prosecute possibly some high-profile companies and make them examples. And I think we need to look to bosses as well. This is wholly and utterly indefensible. If you've got two people doing the same job and someone is being held back by the percentages that you just mentioned, Holly, there is no defence on earth. So let's get, with respect to all of us, let's stop talking, let's get some action, let's get some lawyers involved. I understand the legislation is as tight as we need, so let's see some cases taken forward.
All right, thank you. Thank you.